He walked into the store wearing a bright red MAGA hat, expecting nothing more than a typical shopping trip. But the cashier, casting a contemptuous glance at his symbol, decided she had the right to humiliate him. Without warning, she refused to serve him, unaware that this fanatic was the owner of the very chain of stores where she worked. By the time she realized her mistake, it was already too late. But what he did when the truth came out shocked even her fiercest opponents. Mark walked into the store with the air of a man who knew exactly what he needed and wasn't about to waste time on unnecessary conversation. Ordinary jeans, a t-shirt with his favorite football club's emblem, and of course, a red cap with MAGA embroidered proudly on the front. It was his pride, a symbol that he didn't hide and wasn't afraid to express his views. As usual, the cap attracted attention, but today it seemed to stand out even more. As he entered the store, he headed straight for the product shelf. Calm, assured steps, no rush. He knew that people with views like his weren't exactly liked, but he certainly wasn't going to let that slide. Without turning his head, he noticed cashier Lena, who had just been wiping down the counter, freeze when she saw his cap. He could feel her glare burning into his back. Mark calmly placed 2 bags of rice on the conveyor belt, not letting the tension in the air affect him. Lena, her frown deepening, stood motionless like a statue, staring at him, her irritation impossible to miss. She reached for the items, but couldn't tear her eyes away from his hat. It seemed like she decided something had to be done, and quickly. "What's this circus?" Lena said, eyeing him from head to toe. Her voice was loud and dismissive, as if deciding what animals should be fed next. Mark looked up. He knew the reaction wouldn't be the best, but where was all this aggression coming from? "Is there a problem with my style?" he asked with a smile, even though he knew the conversation wasn't going to be pleasant. Lena furrowed her brows, crossed her arms over her chest, and responded as if deeply condemning something. "I can't serve people like you. It's unacceptable. How dare you wear such a hat in public? It's disgraceful." Mark pursed his lips to suppress a laugh. It was so absurd it was hard not to. He could see how she seemed to care about the dignity of the place, as if he was standing on a red carpet waiting to be assaulted. He thought it was a perfect moment for some sarcasm, and his voice became even calmer. "I guess I'm in the wrong place, huh? I thought I came for rice, but it seems like we've got some fashion rules here. Fine, I'll head to another store where, hopefully, I won't be judged by my hat." Lena ignored his remark, making it clear that it wasn't just the hat, but the person that bothered her. She darted to the register, scanned the items, and, as if embarrassed by her reaction, tried to hurry through the transaction. But her stiffness and hidden aggression were all too obvious. "You're not really part of the normal world, but let's do this. Next time, come in with a different hat, so we don't have any unpleasant moments." Mark felt his patience starting to wear thin. He was used to these kinds of looks, but with every word, her tone made it clear this conversation was going nowhere. If he didn't speak up now, she'd think she could keep going like this. "Wait, who exactly is the customer here? Or am I just not getting your new rules?" Mark asked. "I came here to buy food, but with comments like these, I'm not sure I'm going to buy rice." Lena, not even looking up, decided to continue her battle, ignoring his attempts to steer the conversation back to normal. She began slowly scanning the items, as if expecting him to just leave. But he wasn't going anywhere. "Listen, maybe I should just leave right now and you can throw something at me. You say you can't serve me, but that's actually illegal. Maybe I should file a complaint so this game ends," he said, smirking. Lena, even more irritated, tried to speed things up, thinking that the faster she scanned the items, the faster this nightmare would end. But then, someone laughed from behind him. Mark turned around. It was one of the regular customers. He was watching with clear interest. "Is this a script for a comedy show?" the man said with a smile. "I thought this kind of thing didn't happen here. He doesn't get you, Lena. Maybe you should open the door for him." The customer's words immediately sparked a chain reaction among the other shoppers. Now, people were looking to see who this crazy guy in the hat was, who was stopping Lena's whole world. Lena looked visibly flustered, as her position was becoming more and more ridiculous. She tried to finish the transaction and begin apologizing, but her words seemed hollow, and it was turning into a comedy. Mark stood calmly, but there was an unmistakable sarcasm in his eyes. "I guess I just don't understand anymore," he said, glancing around at the crowd. "So is this a store for serious people, or is it a place where someone decides who deserves service based on their hat?" The crowd began to laugh quietly. Lena, realizing her control was slipping, tried to find a last-minute compromise, but it was already too late. Mark, with a sense of victory, pulled out his phone and turned on the camera. "Well, I guess I'll start recording. This might come in handy." Laughter spread throughout the store as Lena finally realized she had gone too far. But it was too late. She had given in to herself. The crowd in the store noticed the growing tension, began whispering to each other, and started recording what was happening. Lena, her face flushed, tried to compose herself, but her nervousness was obvious in her eyes. Mark, standing with his phone, continued to watch her reaction in near silence. "Well, Lena, go ahead, keep going. I'm waiting," he said with a slight smirk, walking up to the register. Lena tried to ignore his comments as she scanned the items, her irritation clearly visible. But when someone in the line loudly laughed, her patience finally snapped. "You know what?" she said, irritated. "If you like filming me so much, I'll call the police. Let them deal with you." Mark raised an eyebrow and with irony repeated, "Police? Great. You think it works that easily?" The crowd began to murmur, people discreetly switching on their cameras, watching the unfolding events. Lena, not knowing how to end this circus, rushed over to the security guard. "This guy won't leave. He's ruined everyone's mood," she complained. The guard approached Mark, looking at him with confusion. "Hey man, you're acting like a jerk," the guard said. Mark smirked and replied, "Do you hear what they're calling me? I just came for some rice, and this person started the conflict. I thought this was a store, not a battlefield over a hat." The guard, embarrassed by the situation, took a step back. Feeling he couldn't interfere, he simply watched as things played out. Lena felt the situation slipping out of her control. She began to hastily scan the items, trying to end the transaction. "I warned you!" she shouted, losing her patience. Mark pulled out a business card and placed it on the counter in front of her. "Just in case, call my lawyer. I own the chain of stores," he said with a smile. Lena froze. Staring at the business card, then at him, she was completely disoriented. "You know, this is going to be interesting. I can give you my contact too. Who would have thought the owner of the store would get kicked out for a hat?" Mark watched as her confidence faded. The crowd grew silent, everyone waiting to see how she would respond. But Lena was now in a daze. Lena, struck as if by lightning, continued staring at the business card, as though trying to process what had just happened. She remained silent, and the tension in the air became unbearable. The crowd in the store now held its breath. A few people filmed the scene, while others whispered, clearly sensing that something important was about to unfold. Lena shifted her gaze from the business card to Mark, her face paling. Is this for real?" she stammered, her voice faint and almost trembling. Mark looked at her, a slight smile on his lips. He felt the long-awaited and hard-earned moment turning into a true victory. "Of course it's real," he said calmly and confidently. "I can give you more of my contact details if you need to check. I'm not opposed if you need time." Lena opened her mouth, but couldn't utter a word. In her eyes there was not only confusion, but also a hint of panic. She looked at the security guard, and he appeared just as confused as she was. He stood aside, unsure what to do, his gaze darting between Mark and Lena. For a few seconds, no one moved. But everything changed abruptly when a man, older than Mark, stepped out from the crowd with a familiar expression on his face. "Wait, you're the one, aren't you?" the man asked, eyes wide. He stepped closer and pointed at the business card in Lena's hand. "This is Mark Stanislavov. I saw you on the news. You're not just the owner of the stores. You're something much bigger, right?" Lena froze, and Mark, feeling the situation's climax approaching, took a pause before responding calmly. "Yes, that's me. You're right." The man, in disbelief, turned to the security guard and said loudly, "Don't you get it? This is Stanislavov. He's the founder and owner of the store chain, one of the most influential entrepreneurs in town." The crowd began to murmur excitedly, and now people were whispering, clearly impressed by this revelation. Lena stood there, hypnotized, staring at Mark, trying to understand where she had gone wrong. She could literally feel the ground slipping away from under her feet. Are you serious?" Her voice trembled. Mark smiled again, but this time with a hint of satisfaction, not sarcasm. "Yes, I'm serious. And if you want, I can show you again that I'm not just the guy with the hat." Lena blushed, her anger replaced by a feeling of total humiliation. The guard, realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control, took a step back and said, This is true, Lena. We're in deep trouble." But it was too late. Lena had fully realized that her attempt to humiliate someone based solely on their appearance and symbolism had backfired spectacularly. Mark, remaining calm, accepted the moment as a victory, but without any unnecessary triumph. "Well, Lena, I think you should rethink how you treat customers, especially those who might be your boss," he said, with a subtle hint at her inexperience and naivety. At that moment, among all the people who now supported Mark, one customer stepped closer, looked at Lena, and said, "Do you realize what you just did? You're going viral. This is definitely going to be a meme." Lena stood there, unsure what to say. Every step she took seemed like a mistake, and now the only thing she wanted was to disappear from this room. But a shadow of stubbornness still lingered on her face, even though her internal struggle was obvious. Mark, sensing that his moment of triumph had finally arrived, was preparing to finish this with dignity. Mark stood, calmly observing Lena's reaction, her stunned gaze and utterly lost expression. He understood that for her, this was more than just an awkward moment. It was a catastrophic one, jeopardizing not only her job, but her reputation. The entire store was now a witness to her humiliation, and the fact that she was still trying to defend herself only made her situation worse. Lena, struggling to maintain even a semblance of confidence, opened her mouth a few times, but no words came out. Finally, she managed to squeeze out, I didn't know. I didn't know who you were." Mark smirked, as though unsurprised that she was only now realizing who she had messed with. "I highly doubt that would have mattered, Lena. Don't you think it's unpleasant to be judged based solely on what I wear on my head? Though I suppose you had no reason to treat me with any respect, did you?" The crowd surrounding them could no longer contain their emotions. Some scoffed, others sought a corner to film everything. The absurdity of the situation was so palpable that people were laughing, but not because it was funny, but because of how ridiculous it all was. The cashier, who hadn't bothered to recognize her customers, was now at the center of attention, trying to justify herself. But her words were losing all meaning. Mark glanced at the security guard, who stood off to the side, clearly embarrassed and a little frightened by how his colleague had placed him in such an uncomfortable position. The guard silently watched him, waiting for a reaction. "So, security guard," Mark said with a slightly ironic smile, addressing the man. "Are you with us, or are you still on the side of these normal people?" The guard, seemingly realizing that he was now involved, stepped forward and, with an uncertain expression, said, I didn't know who you were, but actually, I think you should talk to her boss." Mark nodded. "Well, at least someone here knows how to think. I think we all now understand who was right," he said, turning back to Lena, who was still standing there, trying to justify her behavior. But Mark felt it was time to end this little performance. He wasn't in the mood for endless debates, and certainly not to humiliate someone who had already realized their mistake. "Lena," he said in a calm, almost warm tone, "I don't want to take your job away, but I hope next time you'll look at people through something other than your biased lens. We're all humans here, and we all just want to be served, not judged for our beliefs. I hope this is a lesson learned." Lena didn't respond. She just stood there, avoiding Mark's gaze, as though hoping she would simply be forgotten. This was her punishment. This moment of realization that she was wrong, and now this whole situation was on full display for everyone to see. Mark turned to leave, but before he could step out, he heard one of the customers in the queue loudly remark, "This story's definitely going to make the news, Lena. You won't escape it." The crowd, having witnessed it all, supported his comment with laughter, and Mark felt the tension in the air begin to dissipate. People began whispering, laughing, and with each word, it seemed no one took Lena seriously anymore. With a slight sense of satisfaction, Mark wrapped up his little performance. "Next time, if you want to play judge, make sure your client isn't someone who can tear apart your reputation in a couple of seconds." He walked toward the exit, not looking back, but he could feel the tension behind him slowly melting away. The security guard, standing to the side, shrugged, and Lena still couldn't regain her composure. The crowd continued to laugh, and a few people had managed to record the event on their phones. This would definitely make it online, and the video, featuring Lena's humiliating moment, would go viral in no time. But Mark remained unfazed. He knew that despite his victory, this wasn't the end. But one thing was certain. Today, Lena had learned that her bias wouldn't go unpunished, and as he had said, the world was too small to repeat the same mistakes.